Welcome to the Sci-Fi Codes channel. Have fun listening to this story. Don't forget to subscribe. With the subscribe button, Chapter 1, The Crimson Horizon. Jack Vallis stood at the edge of his workshop, hands resting on the cold metal railing as he gazed out at the horizon. The landscape before him was a bleak, endless expanse of red sand dunes and jagged rocks that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was the Crimson Belt, a desolate, forgotten colony on the far rim of explored space. It was a place where survival was harsh and time seemed to stand still, a wasteland scarred by ancient wars and abandoned by those who once called it home. His workshop was the only light for miles, a faint, flickering glow in the oppressive twilight that marked the planet's long evening. Jack had been born here, raised on stories of the galaxy's wonders. Though he had never left the barren soil of this place, his life as a mechanic had been simple, mundane even. He fixed what was broken: hovercrafts, energy cores, and the occasional starship that found itself lost in the Crimson Belt, desperate for repairs. Today had begun like any other. Jack had spent hours tweaking the engine of a worn-out cargo hauler, lost in the rhythm of his work, until a flash in the sky caught his attention. He paused, eyes narrowing as the bright streak of light cut across the heavens, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. It wasn't unusual to see debris from old battles raining down onto the planet, bits of starships long forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. But this was different. The object was intact, and it was descending with purpose. Jack hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his toolkit and a pair of old energy pistols from a nearby shelf. It had been years since he needed a weapon, but life on the edge of the galaxy demanded caution. Strapping the guns to his waist, he slid a small communicator into his pocket and stepped out into the cold, dry air. The wind picked up as he trekked toward the source of the light, dust swirling around him like a cloud of crimson mist. The terrain was unforgiving, the sand shifting beneath his feet as he climbed a nearby ridge. As he reached the top, his breath caught in his throat. There, in a shallow crater, lay a sleek, silver-black vessel, half buried in the sand. It was unlike any ship he had ever seen. Its surface gleamed in the fading light, curving in smooth, elegant lines that seemed almost organic. A soft blue glow emanated from cracks and seams in its hull. Jack's heart raced as he descended the ridge toward the ship. He had seen many wrecked vessels in his time, but this was something different. There was no mistaking it. This ship was alive with energy, its core still pulsing faintly. As he approached, the ship's outer shell shifted. A panel slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dark doorway. Jack's hand hovered over his pistol as he peered into the ship, waiting. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a figure stepped out. Tall, humanoid, but unmistakably alien. The being was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Its skin shimmered, a deep silver with intricate markings that glowed faintly in the dim light. Its eyes, large and reflective, fixed on Jack as it moved with fluid grace. Jack's fingers tightened around his pistol, but he didn't draw it. The alien stopped a few meters from him, tilting its head slightly as if studying him. "Are you the engineer of this world?" Its voice was soft, melodic, carrying an otherworldly resonance. Jack blinked, trying to process the situation. "I'm a mechanic," he replied cautiously. "What do you need?" The alien's gaze shifted toward the ship. "Our vessel has sustained significant damage. The energy core is failing. We require your assistance to restore it before a catastrophic event occurs." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Catastrophic? How long do we have?" "Not long," the alien replied, its expression, or what passed for one, remaining unchanged. "The core will destabilize in approximately 43 standard minutes," Jack muttered a curse under his breath. "All right, let's not waste time then." He moved toward the ship, the alien stepping aside to let him pass. Inside, the ship was even more surreal. The walls seemed to ripple as he walked through the narrow corridors, the air thick with an electric charge that made his skin tingle. The energy core was housed in a central chamber, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed erratically, sending arcs of energy across the room. Jack could feel the instability of the core in the very air around him. It was on the verge of collapse. "I'll need to bypass the primary conduits," Jack muttered to himself, as he knelt down to examine the cables running from the core. The technology was beyond anything he had ever worked with, and for a moment, doubt crept in. "Do you require assistance?" the alien asked, standing silently behind him. "No," Jack replied, his voice steady despite the pressure. Just give me a minute." His hands moved with practiced precision, though every step felt like he was walking a tightrope. The energy readings were erratic, but slowly he began to understand the patterns. It was almost as if the ship itself was guiding him, showing him where to focus, what to fix. With a final twist of his tool, Jack connected the last conduit. The core pulsed once, twice, and then the erratic fluctuations ceased. The hum of the ship's system stabilized, and the tension in the air dissipated. Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. There, that should hold, at least for now. The alien stepped forward, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You have done well, human. Your skills are remarkable." Jack shrugged off the compliment, wiping his hands on his pants. "Just doing my job." But before he could leave, the alien's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder. "Wait, there is more." Jack turned, confusion crossing his face. More? The lights in the ship dimmed, and the walls began to shift. Jack's heart raced as the chamber transformed, revealing a circular platform in the center of the room. Floating above it were 3 glowing orbs, one green, one blue, one red. "You have proven yourself worthy," the alien said, its voice reverent. "Choose one." Chapter 2. The Choice. The orbs floated before him, their soft, ethereal glow casting strange shadows on the walls. Jack stood motionless, staring at them, his heart pounding in his chest. Whatever choice he made here, he knew it would change everything. Each orb pulsed with energy, resonating in a way that seemed to touch something deep within him. The alien, still standing behind him, spoke in that same melodic voice. Each orb represents a different path, a unique gift. The green orb grants the ability to heal, both machine and flesh. The blue enhances perception, allowing you to see and understand the fabric of reality in ways unimaginable. The red grants strength, both physical and mental, enabling you to overcome any obstacle. Jack swallowed hard, his mind racing. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, nearly overwhelming. He took a deep breath, his eyes flicking between the orbs. The green orb glowed softly, emitting a comforting warmth, healing. He thought of the people back in the Crimson Belt, struggling with illness and injury, lacking the medical supplies they needed. With the power to heal, he could change their lives. The blue orb shimmered with a cooler light, more distant and mysterious. Enhanced perception. Jack had always been drawn to understanding, to finding the patterns and solving the puzzles of the world around him. With this power, he could see the truth behind the universe itself, understand things no human had ever comprehended. But it was the red orb that pulled at him the most. Its fiery light pulsed with raw, primal energy, a promise of strength and resilience. In a place like the Crimson Belt, strength was survival. And Jack had always valued strength, the kind that allowed you to stand up and keep going, no matter how hard the world tried to knock you down. He reached out, his hand hovering over the red orb. The light danced over his fingers, and he could feel the energy pulsing through the air. "I choose this one," Jack said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. The alien nodded. "The path of strength is not an easy one, but you have the heart of a warrior. It will serve you well." As Jack's hand made contact with the orb, it dissolved into a fine mist, swirling around him in a storm of red light. The energy surged through him, filling him with a heat that was both exhilarating and terrifying. His muscles tensed, his mind sharpened, and for a brief moment, he felt as though he stood on the edge of something vast and incomprehensible. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the sensation faded. Jack staggered slightly, catching himself on the edge of the platform. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart hammering in his chest, but he felt different, stronger, more in control. "It is done," the alien said, its voice calm, serene. "You have chosen the path of strength. With this power, you will face challenges and adversaries far beyond what you have known, but you will also have the strength to overcome them." Jack nodded, still trying to process the intensity of what had just happened. His hands trembled slightly as he flexed his fingers, marveling at the strength that now coursed through him. He turned to the alien, his voice low. "What now?" "Now, you must leave this place," the alien said, stepping back toward its ship. "The galaxy will soon call upon you, Jack Vallis. The Crimson Belt is only the beginning." Before Jack could respond, the alien vanished into the depths of the ship. Moments later, the vessel hummed to life, rising slowly from the sand and disappearing into the sky with a soft whir. Jack stood alone in the desert, staring up at the empty sky, The weight of the orb's power still coursed through him, but the world felt heavier now, more dangerous. He knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back. Before proceeding, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Chapter 3. Echoes of the Past. The days that followed were filled with an unnerving quiet. Jack returned to his workshop, but the routine of his old life no longer held the same appeal. The power that now coursed through his veins had changed everything, and he found it impossible to settle back into the rhythm of repairs and maintenance. At night, his dreams were filled with strange visions, flashes of places he had never seen, battles fought in the depths of space, and voices that echoed in his mind, urging him forward. The alien's words haunted him. The galaxy will soon call upon you. But for now, the Crimson Belt remained silent, and the vastness of the universe felt impossibly far away. One evening, just as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the land in deep crimson hues, Jack heard a knock on the metal door of his workshop. Startled, he grabbed one of his energy pistols and approached the door cautiously. When he opened it, he found a man standing there, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. His clothes were worn and dust-covered, the kind of garb you'd expect from someone who had spent their life wandering the unforgiving desert. "You Jack Vallis?" the man asked, his voice rough from years of sand and wind. Jack nodded. "Who's asking?" The man tilted his head slightly, and Jack caught a glimpse of a scar running across his cheek. "Name's Silas. I run supplies to the outer colonies. Heard you were good with machines." "I am," Jack replied cautiously. "What do you need?" Silas glanced back at his hovercraft, parked a few meters away. "My ship's energy core is failing. Thought I could make it here before it went completely dead, but I'm cutting it close." Jack's eyes narrowed. It seemed too convenient. Another energy core problem right after the incident with the alien ship. But he couldn't afford to be paranoid. In the Crimson Belt, people relied on one another to survive. "All right," Jack said, stepping aside to let Silas in. "Let's take a look." The core was in worse shape than Jack had expected. It was an older model, patched together with parts from at least 3 different systems. It was a miracle the thing had lasted as long as it had. "This is going to take a while," Jack muttered, kneeling down to examine the wiring. "You really let this thing go to hell." Silas chuckled, though there was little humor in it. "That's life out here, isn't it? Everything falls apart eventually." As Jack worked, he noticed Silas watching him closely, his gaze lingering a little too long. There was something off about him, something that set Jack's instincts on edge. "Where are you headed?" Jack asked, trying to keep the conversation casual. Silas shrugged. "Nowhere in particular, just trying to make a living. Same as you, I imagine." Jack didn't respond, focusing on the repairs, but his mind was racing. Silas wasn't telling the whole truth, that much was obvious. And the way he had shown up just days after the alien ship, it couldn't be a coincidence. An hour later, Jack finished the repairs. "That should hold for a while," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Silas nodded, but there was a tension in his posture now, a coiled readiness that made Jack's skin prickle. "Thanks," Silas said, his hand hovering near his side. "But I'm afraid I can't let you live." Before Jack could react, Silas drew a blaster from his belt, the weapon aimed squarely at Jack's chest. Instinct kicked in. Time seemed to slow as Jack's body moved on its own, fueled by the strength of the red orb. His hand shot out, grabbing the barrel of the blaster before Silas could fire. With a swift motion, he twisted the weapon from Silas's grip and slammed him against the wall. The power surged through Jack, his muscles taut, his mind clear. He could end this in an instant, snap Silas's neck with a single movement, but something held him back. Silas struggled against him, his face contorted with fear and rage. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into," he spat. "They're coming for you, Vallis. You think you're strong, but you don't know what strength is." Jack tightened his grip, his voice low and dangerous. "Who's coming?" Silas grinned, blood dripping from his lip. "The ones who gave you that power. You're a pawn, Vallis, and they'll come to collect." With a snarl, Jack threw Silas to the ground. The man groaned, clutching his side as he staggered to his feet. "Get out," Jack growled, his fists clenched. "And if you come back, I won't be so kind." Silas glared at him, but he didn't argue. He stumbled toward the door, his breath ragged. Before leaving, he glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes filled with dark promise. "You're already dead, he muttered before disappearing into the night. Jack stood in the center of his workshop, the silence pressing in around him. The encounter had left him shaken, not because of the fight, but because of what Silas had said. The ones who gave you that power. For the first time since touching the red orb, Jack felt a cold knot of fear settle in his gut. He had chosen strength, but at what cost? And who was coming for him? Chapter 4. A Shadow on the Horizon. The days following Silas's visit passed in a haze. Jack found himself watching the horizon more often, scanning the red dunes for signs of movement, of something or someone coming for him. The words of the strange wanderer echoed in his mind, stirring a growing unease he couldn't shake. The work in the shop became mechanical, an automatic routine. But even as he repaired broken machinery or tuned up aging starships, his mind was elsewhere, always returning to the crimson orb and the power it had granted him. His body felt different now, alive with energy that hummed beneath his skin, ready to be unleashed at a moment's notice. Then, just as he began to think that Silas had been nothing more than a drifter with too many secrets, the first sign of trouble arrived. It came not with a shout or an explosion, but a faint, barely detectable change in the air, a ripple like the shifting of sand in a strong wind. Jack noticed it late one evening while he was out repairing a solar panel array a few clicks from the workshop. The sky above was streaked with the deep purples and reds of twilight, and the twin suns were sinking toward the horizon. As he knelt by the panel, adjusting the wiring, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He straightened, wiping the sweat from his brow, and looked around. The landscape was empty save for the ever-present dunes and rock formations, but something felt off. He could feel it, a tension in the air, an almost electric charge that raised the hairs on the back of his neck. Slowly, he reached for the pistol at his side, his gaze sweeping the area. For several long minutes, there was nothing. Then, in the distance, a dark shape appeared on the horizon. It was small at first, barely more than a speck, but as it drew closer, Jack could make out the unmistakable silhouette of a starship. It wasn't the kind of ship you'd expect to see in the Crimson Belt. Sleek, black, and angular, it cut through the air with a predatory grace, its engines barely making a sound as it approached. Jack's heart began to pound. He backed away from the solar panels, moving toward his hovercraft. Whatever that ship was, it wasn't friendly. The ship hovered over the ridge, its shadow stretching across the desert floor like a black scar. For a moment, it hung there, silent and still. Then, with a soft hiss, the underside of the craft opened, and a figure descended from within. Jack squinted against the fading light, trying to make out details. The figure was humanoid, but tall and armored, its face hidden behind a smooth, featureless mask. It landed lightly on the sand, its movements fluid and deliberate. Without hesitation, Jack climbed into his hovercraft and powered up the engines. He wasn't about to stick around to find out what this thing wanted. But as he revved the engine, the figure raised a hand. A pulse of energy shot from its palm, striking the hovercraft with a crackling burst of light. The controls went dead, the engine sputtering out as Jack's craft skidded to a stop in the sand. "Damn it," Jack muttered, drawing his pistol as he leaped from the craft. The figure was approaching now, its footsteps silent, its posture calm and menacing. Jack raised his pistol, firing off 3 quick shots. The energy bolts slammed into the figure's chest, but they dissipated harmlessly, absorbed by some kind of invisible barrier. The figure stopped a few meters away, its head tilting slightly as it studied Jack. Then, in a low, distorted voice, it spoke. "Jack Vallis, you have something that does not belong to you." Jack's grip on the pistol tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." The figure took another step forward. "The orb, the power. It was not meant for you." Jack's mind raced. Silas's words flashed in his memory. "They're coming for you." "Who are you?" Jack demanded, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his gut. The figure tilted its head again, as if considering the question. "We are the rightful guardians of that power. You are an anomaly, a mistake. Surrender the orb or face the consequences." Jack's jaw tightened. "I don't have the orb anymore. It's part of me now." The figure's mask glowed faintly as it regarded him. "Then you will die with it." With a sudden burst of speed, the figure lunged forward, its hand crackling with energy. Jack barely had time to react, diving to the side as the ground where he had been standing exploded in a shower of sand and rock. He rolled to his feet, the power of the orb surging through him. His muscles tensed, his senses sharpening as the figure charged again. This time Jack met it head-on, his fist connecting with the figure's armored chest. To his surprise, the force of the blow sent the figure stumbling back, its armor cracking slightly under the impact. The power of the orb flowed through him, amplifying his strength far beyond what should have been possible. The figure recovered quickly, its movements precise and deadly. It lashed out with a flurry of strikes, but Jack was faster, dodging each blow with ease. The power coursing through him made him feel invincible, like nothing could touch him. But as the fight dragged on, he began to realize something. The figure wasn't trying to kill him. It was testing him, pushing him to his limits. "Is this all you are capable of?" the figure taunted, its voice echoing in the fading light. "You wield the power, but you do not understand it." Jack's anger flared. He charged forward, fists glowing with the energy of the orb, and delivered a powerful strike to the figure's mask. The mask shattered, revealing the face beneath. It was not human. Silver skin, much like the alien who had given him the orb, with glowing alien eyes that burned with intensity. "You," Jack muttered, realization dawning. The figure smiled, a cold, predatory grin. "Yes, we are the same, you and I, but only one of us can survive." With that, the figure unleashed a blast of energy that sent Jack flying backward, his body slamming into the sand. Dazed, he struggled to his feet, but the figure was already gone, disappearing into the night. Jack stood there, breathing hard, the wind whipping around him. The fight was over, but the war had just begun. And somewhere out there in the vastness of space, others like the figure were watching, waiting. Jack Vallis was no longer just a mechanic in the Crimson Belt. He was a target. If you enjoy this video, then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell.